G'day Eagles fans, welcome back to True Eagle for my review of Western Derby 61. Apologies, it wasn't the most timely review. A little bit caught up with my other channel, True Footy. We did the live show for the showdown last night, so it's been a busy weekend. And having more time to think about the game, I still don't really have a clear idea on the main narratives that came from this game. Honestly, I think it was a game we were almost dreading a little bit because of the narrative going into this week, right? So, Fremantle on the one hand pull off one of the best wins of recent times for them, certainly the last decade, I would have thought, against Collingwood. And they come up against us, who's coming off a shameful result against Richmond the previous week where, we lost to the second worst side in the competition by 8 goals. So naturally, the narrative about this particular derby was, gee, how bad could it get? And to be honest, there wasn't really much of a realistic shot we had of winning this game. There was no... even if Fremantle had a stinker, I doubt we would have gotten up. So from that perspective, it could have been a lot worse than it actually was. Overall, I thought we toughed out the game okay. We battled it out, and save for a pretty poor first quarter, or at least the back end of that first quarter, I thought we kept trying for the most part. There's just a huge talent deficit between us and the rest of the competition at the moment. So I don't know if it's a pleasing element to the game, but it's certainly something that gave me a bit of relief was that we were able to just battle it out and grind out a 49-point loss, even though Fremantle were a bit inaccurate. From that point of view, it could have been worse. It didn't help when prior to the game Harry Edwards is laid out. I think that's a hamstring injury, which I believe they knew about going into the game, and he just didn't quite pull up, I think, in the warm-up. So, to drop another 50-plus game player, of which we don't have too many on the list, or at least available to play at the moment, that was a blow. Harry Edwards is probably top 5 in the best and fairest this year, and with Fremantle's tools and the form of guys like, Pat Voss in particular, maybe Harry would have gone to Tracy or perhaps more likely Amos. Either way, I thought that was a bad blow to receive at the start of the game and have Sandy Brock come in. So, we have 10 players in this game, less than 50 games experience, and 13 of them less than 60 games. So we were certainly vulnerable for a thrashing, that's for sure. It starts okay. Thankfully, we were quite efficient with our opportunities early. We kicked 5 goals before we kicked behind, and usually that is switched around, right? I think we're a goal in front halfway through the first quarter or something like that. And then the disappointing element of the game was probably the back end of that first quarter, where Fremantle came at us in an avalanche, and I think they were 6 goals for at quarter time. So at 40-12, at that point, I'm thinking, God, I really hope this doesn't end up as a 100-point loss. Thankfully, due to a bit of luck with Fremantle missing, we did actually win the second quarter. We were a little bit more accurate, that's for sure. Although, it's not like Fremantle were missing gimmies. They were also kicking great set shots from the pocket in addition to that. And we also, we didn't miss too many, but the ones we did miss were also quite gettable. So, look, we were a little bit lucky to win the quarter, but I think, generally speaking, regardless of, who won the quarter, I'm relieved a little bit that we didn't fall away entirely. That carried into the third quarter, which we did lose. Fremantle kicked 3-6, but we also kicked 2 goals for ourselves, and there's a couple of set shots from, I think, Liam Ryan. If I'm thinking of the right quarter, he misses 2 very gettable ones. Job Shanahan also fails to score from a gettable position as well, at least by his standards anyway. So, at this point, 30 points at 3-quarter time, I'm still thinking, geez, this could blow out. Now, Fremantle kicked 8 goals too in the last quarter, and I think if you just said that with no context, you'd think, shit, we mustn't have touched the ball in that last quarter, but we at least put 5 goals past them ourselves. So I guess long story short, what I'm saying is we kind of never really fully went away in this game, other than the second half of the first quarter. And that is really all we could have really hoped for, to be honest. I'm not going to get fired up because we didn't get close to winning. We were never going to get close to winning this game. So there's a little bit of a sigh of relief, to be honest, that this didn't get worse, and we can sort of move on. As for the general stats breakdown of this game, minus 14 inside 50s, 42 inside 50s is not a lot. I reckon we got quite a few in the last quarter because that was tracking very poorly at one point of the game. Once again, thankfully, we were quite efficient with our opportunities on goal. Smashed and contested ball by 23, smashed and uncontested ball by 32. On the plus side, I reckon we had 10 marks inside 50, which I'm going to guess is probably above average for us. So it goes to show that even though we were getting beat up around the ball, that at times I felt like our connection with our forward 50 was probably better than our usual average. Like the way we moved the footy once it sort of settled down, in particular in the second half, and our ability to get, from our back half to our front half wasn't too bad in this game. So again, how much do we take out of that? Not much, but let's just call it what it is. That was something we did relatively well in this game. A lot of free kicks in this game. It ended up being 26 to Fremantle, 25 to us. I'm not even sure it was badly umpired. I am as sick as anyone of the 50-metre infringement for someone like putting their foot over the mark. Don't get me wrong, but if I'm honest, I kind of do understand why they don't want players starting to, take the piss with standing over the mark, because that can quickly get out of control. It just felt like the umpires were very hot, but I feel like both teams, and certainly us, we were giving away a few undisciplined free kicks. I think we were all just very jittery. So that's something else I'd say, from this game. We had some moments we'd like to get back with the ball in hand, particularly someone like Ruben Jinbi, not to call him out too much. I think he's been in our top 5 players this year, but he had some moments he'd like to forget, like run down in the back 50 when he should never have been run down. Some terrible kicks. Oh my goodness. But a lot of that was early. And I guess this game, perhaps because it was a derby, there's a little bit more energy in the air. It was a little bit more electric, and I felt that throughout particularly the first half, and when Fremantle got on top at the end of the first quarter, it felt like there was not only the pressure that Fremantle was putting on, which was really strong, but then after that, there was a sense of perceived pressure. And I felt like perhaps in the heightened state that we were in, we seemed very jittery. And thankfully, we actually battled it out and got better as the game wore on. Obviously, Fremantle's pressure would have dropped off as well, but I thought we hung in there better than, perhaps I was dreading, if that makes sense. And in a way, it's good experience. I mean, none of these boys are getting finals experience in the next few years, you'd think, at West Coast, but while I wouldn't say it was finals-like atmosphere by any stretch, it wasn't. It was still definitely different to a normal game. And perhaps, that's part of their development. The game's a little bit heightened, the pressure's up, and Fremantle breathing down our necks, and for us to work through that without the scoreboard getting too out of control, that's something that I'll take. And that is how low my expectations were going into this game. We'll talk about some individuals. Unsurprisingly, a lot of our best players were our senior players in this game. That is probably, connected to the fact that it was a little bit more intense than a regular game, and therefore we needed to rely on our senior players, and our senior players have either fallen off a cliff this year or the good ones have all got injured. So there's not too many left, but Liam Baker was outstanding, I thought. 24 disposals, 2 goals, playing as a midfielder forward, attended about 1/3 of the centre bounces as a midfielder. 10 tackles as well, plus 5 clearances. I thought that was, one of his best games for us, and, that's been a pretty high bar. He's been a wonderful contributor this year. Tim Kelly also played well, if I'm going to be honest. I think he spent a little bit more time in the midfield, not too much more, but I think his percentage was around in the 40s, so it wasn't a full game of midfield for Tim Kelly, but he had 26 disposals, which I think is the most for any Eagle, 8 clearances and 2 goals. 16 of those possessions were contested as well, so winning his own ball and 7 score involvements. So look, that is a pretty good performance from Tim Kelly, credit where it's due. We desperately need that on a more consistent basis from Tim. But if that is the new baseline, that's fine. And shit, with Harley Reid injured and potentially out for the year, which we'll touch on, we're actually running out of midfielders in general. I think, and we will talk about this, I think there's a chance that the Waffle team has no midfielders next week. On Harley, thought he played pretty well. A couple of good goals, particularly that goal where he's running up the wing on the left side of the broadcast camera. Touchwood, his injury is not too bad. I posted on True Eagle AFL, which is the Instagram I have for this channel, if anyone wants to follow along at home. But I think Ryan Daniels is reporting it is syndesmosis, but that is a broad spectrum, so we still don't know if it's a bad syndesmosis. Obviously, that can be quite bad if it's on the severe end. So hopefully Harley isn't out for too long. There is a good chance he's probably not going to play again this year, which would make it the first time he's missed a game through injury, if I'm not mistaken. He's either been suspended or managed. So again, touch wood. But hopefully, he rests up and it doesn't affect his preseason for next year, because last year, or the start of 2025 rather, he had a lower leg injury. I'm not sure what that was, but he couldn't do the whole preseason. Another senior player who played well was Jamie Cripps. 2 goals, 16 possessions, 5 score involvements and 7 inside 50s. Kicked a good goal from 50 metres out. So again, just another senior player who was able to offer us some strength and composure, I suppose, in key moments. I thought he played pretty well. I did highlight Ruben Jinbi for a couple of, or maybe 3 bad errors in the early parts of this game, but then I saw on WCE Sizzler on Instagram He was on Josh Tracy, which I didn't even really notice, and kept him goalless. So that is good, considering how undermanned we are in terms of our backline. We don't have a particularly good backline, but then you take out, obviously, McGovern, who's retired, and Harry Edwards, the next best. Bazo and Brock and Jinbi, very, very inexperienced trio down there. So well done to Ruben Jinbi on a good performance against a very formidable opponent in Josh Tracy. Any other individuals? I mean, Ryan Marrick I thought was good. Again, another player who made some errors early, but I just don't think particularly our younger guys adapted well to the heightened pressure of the game, and that did get a little bit better. I thought Marrick was okay. 22 possessions, I think. 21 possessions, actually, at 81% efficiency, and a really courageous mark where he got a free kick for it. That was in the first half. Hewitt had a slightly quiet game. I mean, he never really averages a lot of possessions, but I didn't really notice him a lot. But he had 14 touches, a goal obviously, and 4 clearances. And I looked it up, he actually had less time on ball than someone like a Liam Baker. So 4 clearances from a guy who's sort of, playing maybe 1/3 of the game in the midfield is actually pretty solid. Not all of those clearances have come from the centre bounce, but he's sort of pushing up at stoppages, presumably, and he still won 4 clearances. That's pretty good. Matt always got subbed out of this game with 3 possessions. He was having a shocker, and I'd imagine probably gets dropped for next week. I put up a post on the True Eagle Instagram, I think in the third quarter, when Liam Ryan missed 2 terrible set shots, that we need to banish him from our forward line. So he is still a good player. And I think I was a little bit fired up and frustrated that he was missing those shots. And I was very concerned about how bad the scoreline would get if we didn't keep scoring. So that was part of it. But I also do think, despite the fact that right after that, he took one of the marks of the year and then I think kicked a goal as well. And the week before was a goal of the year contender. Honestly, his set shot game has become woeful. And it's gotten to the point where if Liam Ryan is 25 metres out directly in front, lining up for a set shot, I would put money on him missing it. I'm not trying to rag on him, but I think it's true. And he's still capable of kicking great goals, as he kicked one good snap in this game, or a check side, I think it was. And then last week's snap, bouncing over the head of Tyler Young, I think it was. But overall, I think we can get so much more out of Liam Ryan if we put him behind the ball. Put him at half back, or he probably doesn't have the tank for a wing position. But if he's delivering the ball inside 50, he is possibly still the best kick on our list. Get him, in that position, delivering the ball to our forwards, and maybe we'll have half a chance. But I don't really want to see Liam Ryan taking too many set shots for the rest of this year. A few injury concerns generally. I think we can probably bank on Harley Reid missing some time, potentially the rest of this season. We'll see, touch wood. But there's a strong chance he's going to miss next week against Melbourne. Liam Duggan was also pretty sore for most of this game, but I thought he came back on. I could be wrong. So let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. I think he came back on. And I read during the week Bo Allen left training, I think. Might have been a rolled ankle, but we haven't really had too much clarification on what that is. So a couple of soldiers going down this week. So changes next week will be interesting. I just watched the last little bit of the Waffle Eagles go down narrowly against Peel Thunder, which, to be honest, is a good result. That was one of our better efforts over the course of this season. Tom Gross, probably our best on ground, 2 goals and 23 possessions. So, bring him back in this week. Frankly, we need midfielders at this point. Jack Petrocelli is now, assuming Gross comes into the AFL side. Jack Petrocelli has been playing as a midfielder at the Waffle Eagles. Other than that, there's no other AFL listed midfielders in that team. So if that doesn't sort of highlight everything I've been talking about on this channel for the last year, we need some midfielders. I think that is a great example. If Duggan were to miss, there's not too many other blokes putting their hand up. I mean, Jaden Hunt is the experienced option. Campbell Chesser has played 2 good weeks out of 3 or 4 since he come back into the Waffle, and it could be a case of seeing what he's got one last time, maybe. I'd like to see Harvey Johnston given a crack as well as a running defender. So there's a few options there. I'd also like to see a little bit of Jacob Newton. He was one of our best today in the Waffle too, mid-season draftee. Haven't seen a lot of him, but he's actually quite, efficient and potent with his scoring. So he's a good set shot, he's good around goals, and starting to win a little bit more of the footy. I would actually give him a crack at AFL level sometime between now and the end of the season. So I'll say Gross in for Reid and Newton in for Owies. And then, if it were up to me, I would probably go Johnston in for Liam Duggan if he was to miss. But I'd probably say that Duggan might be all right. So that's all I've got for this week at the moment, guys. Over the next couple of days, we've got some trade rumour videos coming out on True Footy that we discussed on the live stream on a Saturday night, of which there are a number of targets for West Coast, but I might do another West Coast specific video. We're linked to a number of players. I mean, Neil Erasmus, Judd McVie, he's a player I do want to talk about in a proper video. Angus Sheldrick re-signed with the Sydney Swans. I think today I saw that news. So there's a bit to play with, and then there's a really big off season coming for us. It's getting to that point where that is where my mind is, and the games are starting to become, let's just hope this doesn't get too bad. We do have an interesting game against Melbourne at Marvel this upcoming week, and they just conceded the biggest comeback of all time against St Kilda, so hopefully they're asleep and we can make a real game of it next week. But for the time being, I will be making some draft and trade content coming soon. Not sure exactly when yet. I've still got a lot of work on my plate at the moment. Let me know in the comments, first of all, your thoughts on this game, any other thoughts, Eagles general, and the list management stuff, which is going to ramp up over the next couple of months as well. But for now, let me know what you think, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Up the Eagles. Cheers.